Welcome to XCOM 2, where your playthrough is either defined by a bittersweet victory achieved atop the pile of heroes lost to battle, or way too many hours spent save scumming, trying to save each and every single one of them. Guess which I fall into. XCOM 2 was one of those games that I had heard about throughout my time perusing YouTube, but never really gave that much more thought. At some point, a friend of mine recommended it to me, so I went to check Steam and
Holy Mary Mother of Joseph!
Grabbed it right away, along with the War of the Chosen DLC, of which I was informed was integral to enjoying the game to its fullest potential. So, just know that number 1, this is the first and only game from the XCOM series that I have played, and 2, I was probably too busy laughing my ass off at how the cutscenes in this game look straight out of Hunt Down the Freeman to pay any attention. Got it? Cool. Here's where I put a disclaimer. XCOM 2 is a game which in itself holds up really well, even by modern standards, but War of the Chosen adds more content to the game than any single DLC contribution than I have ever seen before. So this review will include it as an integral part of the game. Got it? Okay. XCOM 2 is a sci-fi turn-based tactical game published by Take-Two back in 2016, which is very nearly a decade ago at this point. Feel old yet? As a sequel to the 2012 reboot of the series. Now, I haven't played any other XCOMs, as I mentioned before, so I will openly admit that some of the terminology and lore was pretty lost on me at the very beginning, but beyond that, playing the previous games isn't necessary at all to having a good time in the sequel. This game takes place 20 years after its predecessor, on an Earth that has been completely taken over by an alien force known as Advent, think Combine from Half-Life, but the human harvesting is much more subtle, and all in the name of the Elders. Your faction is known as XCOM, as the name of the game implies, a paramilitary resistance organization that have charged themselves with the mission to kick out our extraterrestrial squatters and put an end to the Earth's occupation. In addition, we will be forced to face off against the entirety of the population of Philadelphians in their efforts to turn our bones into crack pipes. You play the role of a nameless commander, apparently some super genius tactician that has been trapped by Advent at some point before the game occurs. The tutorial has you rescuing yourself from this super well protected facility with a squad of elite soldiers. And by elite soldiers, what I actually mean is 3 dumb fucks, 2 of which die, and an old man who almost gets shot to death despite the facility also being guarded by budget Little Red Riding Hood and her attack chihuahuas. Don't worry, beyond this point I won't lose any other soldiers. As far as XCOM stories goes, there are some objectives in the top left corner, the completion of which will mosey progression along. Pre-planning and upgrades all take place within the obligatory Rebel helicarrier, of which the Rebels acquired by rummaging through the returns bin of their local IKEA. Here you will find tutorials for cleaning out debris, researching advanced alien technology, the recruiting and upgrading of soldiers, the manufacturing of unlicensed firearms and illegal narcotics, rooms for your soldiers to go and train, rooms for even more advanced alien technologies, and 5G towers for holding long-distance phone calls with friends and not friends who will be friends later. Fortunately, I can't read, so we ignore the tutorials and continue on to the actually fun part of the game, which is flying the ship around Earth and getting into squabbles with Advent over the 5th Amendment of the Constitution of the United States of America. Throughout the game, Advent will attempt to complete the construction of a project simply known as the Avatar Project, which you are tasked with taking out, and that's about as much as I will say to keep from spoiling the game. Battle in XCOM 2 is really quite simple, until it isn't. Now, I'm not going to lie that when I say I have mastered the combat of this game, really what I mean is I've mastered the art of identifying which of the autosaves I revert back to whenever Tweedledum here misses an 80% shot at hitting the broadside of a barn from the inside. Every character has 2 actions that they can take. They can move twice, they can throw grenades, they can use items, they can reload, they can shoot, or they can wait and then shoot on somebody else's turn. Generally speaking, shooting is how you end a character's turn. Beyond that, combat boils down to getting into cover, dodging shots, and hoping that you don't get flanked, then moving into places where you can flank and hoping that enemies don't dodge your shots. Eventually, as characters level up, they unlock abilities that can help in combat immensely. As lame as it sounds for me to say that I save scum a lot of the joy of the combat of XCOM 2 comes from mixing and matching all of your different soldiers in order to play to their different strengths, and then once you get into battle, mixing and matching various soldier abilities to play to the strengths of your squad. I can't understate just how fun this process is in a way that it's very difficult to convey without actually playing it, so I really recommend getting the game. If there's one thing this game doesn't lack, that is enemy variety. I would be 40 hours into a playthrough and run into a new enemy that I had previously never met before, which could sometimes pose quite the significant threat. To balance the hordes of Advent and the Lost, the game gives you, the player, access to 5 main classes that soldiers can spec into once they level up. There's Specialist, the game's healer and support. Ranger, operatives that get a sword and shotgun and encouraged to either sneak around as ninjas or slap chop their way to victory. Sharpshooter, which as the name implies, has a sniper. Grenadier, the game's support gunner and explosives expert. And Psi operative, which, I'll be honest, I never really touched throughout my time just because it takes a while to get that, or at least it did in my playthrough. And in addition to these classes, War of the Chosen also adds 3 allied factions that can be recruited from. The Reapers are fast, agile, practically invisible, and hard-hitting snipers. The Skirmishers have grapple hooks,
tactical movement,
and the Templars have some of the best melee units in the game, able to chain as many attacks in a row as is needed to ensure the enemy is reduced to atoms. War of the Chosen adds a lot of enemies, but for the sake of keeping a playthrough fresh and not spoiling all of them, these are the 3 most important. Specifically, these are special bosses that each control a region of the world and cause a lot of issues until you man up and kill them. In order, we have the incel that studied the sniper, Daddy's favorite boy, and It's Not a Phase. Whenever these guys show up, they mean serious business, and it can sometimes be a little bit tense. XCOM 2's gameplay loop mainly consists of running around Earth, shooting things on occasion, and managing your resources. But enough of this. You'll reach the end of the game and its fantastic plot twists and its amazing conclusion on your own. I would be remiss if I didn't mention one more thing that XCOM 2 has up its sleeve. Modding. Anyone with any amount of familiarity will know the depths of the Steam Workshop can be oftentimes filled with heaps of garbage and anime, but fortunately it seems the people who modded XCOM 2 are more of a serious bunch. Never mind. This is the second reason why I got War of the Chosen, because the majority of the mods here require it to work, but of them, the one I am most stoked to try is definitely Long War of the Chosen. This is your Calamity mod, your RL Craft, your Tale of Two Wastelands, but for XCOM 2. If you'd like to see a full list of the mods I run in my playthrough, I've left a link in the description below. But just to leave off the video on a more fun note, here are some of my character creations. John Cod, Long Reptile, Dimes for Crimes, various Reach characters.
What?
The Other John Cod, Walmart Stormtroopers, Avatar, The Last Airbender, Reach-inspired characters, Mr. T, Better Spider-Man, War Crimes, a homeless man who snuck onto the ship and got drafted.